Will was...
He was a genius.
Probably like just the most chaotically brilliant person ever.
In a way, sometimes I think that he's watching, I guess.
Kind, generous, intelligent, complex, annoying, irritating, difficult, all in one, and you could get every single possible version of Will in not even one day, in the space of an hour.
Hi, my name's Will. I'm 18 and I have severe mental health problems.
He was passionate about so many things. He was intelligent. He was so loving. He had been troubled his whole life.
You're not be like
Do you want
that.
the phone at you?
We're video.
Go away.
Right.
Stop harassing me.
As the need got stronger, the help seemed to fall away even more. It's incredible.
You're going to kill me? Go throw me downstairs? Is that what you're going to do? Is that what you, I think that's what you'd want to do, isn't it?
You wouldn't believe it.
Stop.
I'm videoing you and this is going to be shown to the police.
He's left an awful lot of evidence of what happened that day.
I think it's important to share my experience so other people can know what to expect, firstly, and, you know, maybe take my advice in helping them to get the treatment that they need.
William's first Christmas. There he is.
This is little William. He's 3 months old.
Because so many bad things happen, you forget the good things. Hit it now.
Oh gosh, that tune used to drive me
Yeah.
insane. I guess that was his musical, you know, talent coming out.
Yeah, they wanted something musical.
Yes, where's my dad?
Sort of almost seems like it's some other people there.
That's it. Good boy. There's a clever boy.
Steady! Steady! It almost feels like a different life.
Kick legs.
Is that my bench?
Yes!
That's my bench.
Yes! Your mum left it in the garden.
I used to live next door. I lived here from being born, so did he. So it was just like having a sibling, I guess. That was in that little bit there that I used to call Robin's Garden.
You used to call it what?
Robin's Garden.
Yeah. Oh, so that...
We were always just there.
You were always together?
Yeah.
I think they had a natural affinity. They both had the same sense of naughtiness, really. And like just doing something that's a little bit, you know, just a bit against the rules. And I think they both had that sort of little glint in their eye.
Spark.
This is the bit. There it is. We were always swapping gardens, like, oh, should we go to my garden today to do the trampoline or his garden to do the swings? And Sally used to come back and find me on the swings. And my mum used to come back and find Will on the trampoline. And my mum wasn't best pleased because apparently we were wrecking a hedge. She was like, Robin, where's Will in the garden? I was like, oh yeah, we've got a gate between the hedges. She was like, what? But I think that's my favourite memory of Will. He was always way above his age and always very clever.
Sensor. It turns around both ways, doesn't it, Will?
I first came across Will when he was in year 2 at primary. The class I was in, I was asked to just keep an eye on that one.
Brilliant. That is.
Will's made that all on his own.
He had quite a mind for how things work. We had books about how cars work. I used to work with aircraft. We looked at how aircraft engines work.
It was just her warmth and empathy, and I think she just made him feel safe.
I was supported really well at school because I had support in relation to my Asperger's.
There were also some moments where, you know, it was challenging times, and he'd be up a tree. He would have refuge up a tree. So we had a tent for him, and that was his safe place where he had soft things around him so he could be.
But Will also wanted to be social, and he was really attracted to other kids and wanted to be with them. But once he got there, he didn't know what to do, and that was really heartbreaking to witness.
Yeah, that's Will, careful! 5.5 months.
There we
So
go.
due in September. And it's going to be a little girl. Hi, Will.
He was kind of like fascinated at first, but then he soon realised that she was taking our attention away from him.
Did you make her laugh?
First, there was all that time she wasted looking for a pencil.
Tell me about Will.
Well, I don't really know. From a young age, it was just kind of, I don't know. I never really saw him as my brother.
When I had Alice, he couldn't really handle it. So he saw her as a kind of, threat, really.
Let her play with this one. Just wait a minute. Let her play with this. No, wait.
Let me open it.
Okay, just let it go for a minute, and you can open it in a minute. We'll just have a little good look at this first, because this is Alice's stuff, isn't it?
He was different than a normal brother.
He could just be so cruel and so relentlessly horrible to her. All of his behaviours were like what other kids do, but times 10.
Yeah.
And that was the same throughout his life.
Mm.
It was all just complete extremes.
At preschool, he had hit a boy round the head with a baseball bat and sent him to hospital. And it was because of that destructiveness that I wanted him to have a diagnosis in the end, because I didn't want people to think he was an awful child, because he wasn't.
Cheeky, cheeky. Cheeky monkey. Yes, you are. Oh.
Let me see it.
When I was very young, I was diagnosed with Asperger's.
So once we got that diagnosis, it was just like, oh, when we get the diagnosis, we will, we'll get some help. We'll know what, we'll be told what to do, and it's just not the case.
We were just left making it up as we went along, really.
And it's hard to believe.
Just ways forward with difficult behaviour and some ideas about strategies that we could have adopted would have been really helpful.
I know he didn't want to be like that, because he cried about it and he'd say that he didn't want to, and I believe him because I know he didn't, and I have a lot of empathy for him, for all the things that he'd been through at school especially.
When I was 13, I think, I was bullied for about a year, constantly. And unfortunately, it had quite a traumatic effect.
He looked very anxious and awkward and difficult. I remember just dropping him off at school and just the way he walked from the car to the school. I remember seeing some boys laughing at him and stuff like that, just by the way he was walking.
I started developing social anxiety, where I'd be thinking about what, someone standing there be thinking, what they think of me, how I'm walking, what my stance is like, what my facial expression's like, all the tiny little details that are really meaningless, but it really got in my head.
But then that changed in year 9 when he met Matt and Joe and all of that new friendship group. I think that was some of the happiest times that he had.
I'm Matt, I went to school with Will. We met and then kind of instantly got on really, really well and were really good friends. from then, like for the whole rest of his life, yeah.
We were close friends for a few years, and our friendship grew constantly through that time. It had its ups and downs, but yeah, I felt very lucky actually to know him.
He had a really smart and clever sense of humour, but was never really concerned about what people thought and would think about what he'd said, so he'd just say it, and that to me made him like one of the funniest people that I knew.
The thing that impressed me the most was his piano playing. I don't play any instruments, and he composed pieces himself.
He'd say to me, "Is it all right if I have some friends back tonight?" And I was like, "Yeah, oh gosh, what's that going to be like?" I remember coming in through the front door, and there was literally a concert going on in the piano room.
He'd play some for me in person, and I'd be listening. I'd be impressed by what I was hearing, and then I'd look at his hands, and I'd be impressed with how quickly he was moving his hands.
Each one of his friends was just doing a performance, you know, including Will, who'd at that point taught himself the piano. Even though I'm a pianist, he wouldn't let me teach him at all. There was no way. And he was really, really good.
When he put his mind to something, he was insane. Like, his GCSEs was incredible. He hadn't really worked at school at all for the entire time that he'd been at school. And then he got to year 11 and decided, actually, maybe I want to go to Cambridge. I'm going to start working towards my GCSEs, and in a few months he revised all of his GCSEs and did better than most people that I know.
I'm Will, and I got 9 in English language, 7 geography, 8 in maths, 7 in English lit, 9 computer science, 9/8 in science, and an A in DT.
I remember his teacher at parents' evening saying, "It's amazing. We don't know what's happened, but suddenly," and he was just working, and he was motivated by it
because his friends were working.
Exactly.
They were a good influence on him. He respected them.
And then he was having a social life. They were coming round to the house. This kind of thing had never happened before. It was really nice.
And then when he was about 16, he started having like mental health issues creeping in, and it made him have big ups and downs. He would have very big highs and lows.
I started developing depression. I remember I started just crying in class. I'd just stare at the wall and start crying for absolutely no reason.
Do not be like
Do you
that.
want this thrown at you?
We're videoing.
Go away.
Right.
Stop harassing me.
Eventually, I had to leave school since it just got worse and worse.
He knows exactly what he's doing.
The house was just completely battered. Doors were cracked, walls were bashed.
And just hearing like doors slam, just loud sudden noises, like was horrible.
Sometimes he would try and, you know, whack his head on the corner of a wall. He'd lock himself in the bathroom, and, you know, you just didn't know what he was doing.
The fighting got worse, and it was scary.
I guess from there I kind of got progressively worse quite quickly.
I think we had 50 police calls in just over a year. Give me my police.
He was strong. If it got to a physical confrontation, I couldn't restrain him, or if I did, it was really awful.
You'd hear shouting or banging.
Right, I'm going to go and get Kirsten now.
And we'd kind of be on high alert, really.
I'll go and get Julie or Andy.
It was, do we run outside? Part of us didn't want to interfere, but, you know, wanted to make sure everyone was safe.
If somebody from the outside came in, it would burst the bubble. So if one of the neighbours did come round, he wouldn't want them to see him like that, and he would stop.
Never, ever any escalation of violence with anybody else other than his own parents.
I don't know what we would have done without our neighbours, honestly. They were like literally lifesavers.
Stop it. Let go. Let go. No. Let go. Stop it.
Let go.
You're strangling me.
Let go.
You're strangling me. Stop
I'm
it.
videoing you and this is going to show to the police.
It would just escalate.
You need to come to your appointment. That's why I'm doing this.
We are doing this for you, for your benefit.
I hated him at that point. I really hated him for what he did to my mum and dad. And just, I saw him as a person that had no empathy at all.
I remember a time when I assume we must have called the police. He ran out into the back garden, over the fence at the back, which is incredibly high. I was just frantically searching around and almost tripped over him. He was just lying on the floor, white as a sheet, and I thought he was dead. It was just a really terrifying moment.
And so I started getting suicidal. It started off with self-harm. Kind of just scratch along my arm, up and down, over and over and over again to make a mark. I'd write words, symbols, whatever.
He had carved out the word help on his arm because he was so desperate.
Imagine if you're suffering and you might even die due to suicide, and yet you're not being given therapy because you have to wait a year and 2 months to get it. It's utterly disgraceful.
It was almost like, well, oh, he doesn't quite fit into this box, so pass him here. Oh, well, he doesn't fit into this box. It's like, but no, because anybody with complex needs doesn't fit into a box. It's like, how can they? Because, it's complex. That's the reality of it.
You are told if you're feeling suicidal or you plan on acting on it or anything like that, you go to A&E immediately. And so we did that. My parents taught me.
It became like a routine almost. Certainly like the trips to A&E, it would be awful because he was in a terrible state. We'd be upset. And then eventually he would be seen by a psychiatric nurse usually. And
do you want to know what they told me? Told me to download a mindfulness app after I just tried to kill myself. An app.
And it was just, yeah, incredible really.
And I was discharged. And then the problem is that I kept on doing it.
Will knew his needs were complex, and I will never forget his utter incredulity on that video, saying, yeah, they told me to read a mindfulness app. I mean, even Will knew that that was utterly absurd.
It drove me insane. It was crazy. The number of times that he would do something because he was so desperate to get treatment. He would overdose, intentionally overdose, know that he's taken an overdose, and record what he's taken, but know that he's taken an overdose, and then call the ambulance and say to them, I'm really, really unwell. You need to put me in a mental hospital. He wanted to get sectioned. He tried so hard to get himself put into full-time care because that's what he needed.
Now, it's worth noting, I think around this point, I started getting so sick and tired of being depressed all the time. And I couldn't take it. That's why I was trying to kill myself. And so, in combination of that and both me reading clinical studies about medical cannabis, I decided to start smoking it.
He wasn't just using it recreationally, he was hoping that this would improve how he's feeling. So whether it was some form of psychedelics or ketamine or something that theoretically can be used to improve people with depression, he was trying to do that medical work himself, on himself.
And that was one of the biggest mistakes in my life.
And we could see week on week the increase in effect it was having on him mentally.
You cannot go out, you cannot smoke cannabis
I've
on
given you
on
warning
a school
to
night.
leave me alone,
You
and you
cannot
haven't
do
followed
that.
it to leave me alone.
What are you going to do, big man?
Leave me
What are you
alone.
going to do, big man?
Leave
You're going
me
to kill
alone.
me? Going to throw me downstairs?
Leave me
You're Is that what you're going to do? Is that what you, I know that's what you'd want to do, isn't it?
I started smoking it very heavily. You know, huge amounts every day, multiple times a day.
So your drug habit is so bad that you can't even stop yourself from going out the night before. You know you absolutely have to go.
Don't smoke that in here.
What are you trying to prove now?
Don't smoke that in the house.
What are you trying to prove?
Every day there was something extremely dangerous going on.
We'd get a call from, or a text from him or Sally or John, and me or Matt would quickly go around and help in any way we could.
We got a lock on my door just so he wouldn't, just if I needed it really. And he like lock us in the rooms and things like that. He wouldn't let us go. And I knew he wouldn't, well I was quite sure that he wouldn't actually hurt me.
In the end, I went for a risk assessment, and they said to me, you know, you've basically ticked every box of risk and something has to change. You can't live in the same house with your son. So the only way that Will could have got somewhere would be if he was homeless. And that is just, imagine that is just the most painful thing, because that feels like you're throwing out your sick child. But things were so desperate and so dangerous that there was really nothing else we could do. We had this weekend with so many police calls, and
just that memory is just so awful. That night when the police took him away, detained him, and we said, well, he can't come back here because he was so vulnerable, and now he's gone.
The crisis service is just not fit for purpose. And more on that is that no one should have to wait until they're in crisis to be treated.
It was organised that he was going to go to Robin Hood Avenue in Macclesfield, and he moved in there in July 2020. That was supposed to be a stepping stone to something better. Now the house is just here on the left.
When he'd first gone in, we were told that there was 24 hours assisted care, and that wasn't actually the case.
His room was at the back of the house.
This is assisted accommodation. He was supposed to be checked on. He wasn't found till the Sunday, but we know he died on the Friday. He'd been lying dead in that room for almost 3 days in assisted accommodation.
What we saw was awful. The state of his flat, the state he had been living in. The policeman who attended was really shocked that this could happen in an assisted accommodation, that somebody could die like that in those circumstances. That's an image that will never leave me or us.
It stopped us from going in to visit him, so we had no idea the state of his room.
That was in the November lockdown. They stopped visits.
He was in our bubble too. You know, he's a very extremely vulnerable person who's in our bubble. So it's just like, it was just insane. It just seemed absolutely insane. It's one thing you do, you know, as a mummy, you do trust the people that are supposed to be looking after your kids. You know, you trust that they do actually care, but they couldn't have done.
When I was driving to the house on that Sunday when he was found, I was pretty frantic. I'd been frantic before driving to his, but this one did feel somehow worse. I knew it was a really bad sign that his phone was just going straight to answer phone, because that was unusual, and it had been like that since the Saturday. When I got to the house, There was a member of staff there. We went round to the back. We were knocking, saying, look, Will, you need to open your door because emergency service has been called now. They are going to break the door down when they turn up. But there was no response. And we came back, by which time the fire brigade were there, and they had one of these big things, they're going to break the door down. And just as they were going to do that, one of them just turned the handle and it opened. And at that point, I thought, well, he's unlocked the door. He's heard what we said and he's gone and unlocked the door, so he's all right. And that's why it was so cruel, because I honestly thought he was okay at that point. And I even phoned Sally and I said, don't worry, he's fine. And I went back down the stairs. I didn't go in then, probably just as well. I didn't go in. I just went downstairs with one of the firemen to the office because he wanted me to fill out a form. And I was kind of annoyed, going, I'm really sorry about that. You know, he's wasted your time, and it's, you know, I was kind of annoyed at Will. Then I was sitting doing this form in the office, and then a paramedic just walked in and said, he was sorry, but he'd passed away. That was just like such a shock. Such a shock.
He was supposed to be coming to our house a few days later for Christmas.
Yeah.
So we were really looking forward to having him back.
We were, and I think...
I got all his presents.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that I got a text from John saying to call him, and I called him back, and he was crying on the phone, and he just said, Will's died.
A few months before he passed away, I wrote to him. I said, I'm just grateful you're still here. And I told him about how things had been. Told him what I was up to. I told him how proud I was of him. And he got the letter and he read it, which was good. Because I didn't get to see him after that.
This wasn't somebody who had decided to exit from society. And yet the system didn't help him step in. Would Will have always found life difficult? Yeah, I think he would. But there would have been a way, and there should have been a way to make it that bit easier for him.
On the day of his funeral, they had the hearse outside his house. There must have been 100 people came to his street. He didn't realise how much people respected and loved him, but so many people turned up, so many people from school turned up because he was so important to everyone.
It's now been 3 years almost to the day since we lost Will, and we have the inquest this morning.
The last 3 years have been the nightmare of anybody who has children.
We have worked out how Will died.
We're the ones that got his computer and did that. It wasn't that the police took his computer away and investigated it. Unless you follow it up and you instigate all of this, nothing will happen.
After he died, Matt was able to help us to break into Will's computer.
I found on his computer, written on the day that he died, a spreadsheet where he'd recorded everything that he'd taken, every drug that he'd taken, what dosage of each drug that he'd taken, and at what time.
He kept a log, almost like the way a pharmacist would keep a log, or somebody who's dispensing medicine for someone else would.
Yeah, he almost left his own breadcrumb trail that any one person couldn't have pieced together. I couldn't have pieced it all together. His parents couldn't have pieced it all together. But with kind of the collaboration of the two of us, we were able to figure out exactly what happened.
So this is a document that he made. There's a column, drug taken, oxycodone, dose 20 milligrams. Those are the 2 tablets that were missing from the bag of tablets on his desks. He's left an awful lot of evidence of of what happened that day.
There were some tablets on his
desk.
On his desk, so near enough above him from where he was found, and it didn't appear that they'd been analysed at all. So we asked the coroner that they analyse them essentially, because one of the things that we knew from the records was that Will had self-medicated by ordering various tablets on the dark web.
Those were, as we now know, metanitazine, and we're absolutely sure that that's how he died.
I've got a bit more information about metanitazine. So I was thinking about the drug, the content of these blue pills. He probably bought one of the first packages that were sent over here.
He thought he was taking oxycodone to help his anxieties, and unfortunately the drug that supplied wasn't, and was a really nasty drug that's taken his life.
What can we get out of this absolute tragedy that might stop it happening to some other family?
We've just come out of the inquest now. It was a relief that the coroner came to the conclusion that Will's cause of death was the toxicity of metanitazine.
Yeah.
It was a relief that the coroner came to the conclusion that Will's cause of death was the toxicity of metanitazine, because we know that from everything we've seen and everything we've worked towards, like making sure those tablets were tested, and despite the fact that the blood samples were lost, despite all the things that were going against us, that's something that we can take from this, because she's agreed and it's on the record, and it also becomes part of a bigger picture now that metanitazine seems to be a growing problem in this country. So he is part of that now, part of the weight of the argument, part of the thing that will continue to hopefully prevent some of these deaths later on. So that is a sense of satisfaction.
And also that we know that it's official, that it was death by misadventure. He wasn't trying to kill himself. He had no intention to kill himself. He just wanted some relief from his depression.
She seemed to be herself not happy with some of the level of care and some of the things that happened or didn't happen. But what I don't understand is how you can't have a comment when a flat is found in the appalling state it was found, when the support worker who was there failed to open a door that was open
for 2
days. For 2 whole days.
Well, 2.5 days, yeah.
Isn't that worth a comment? Isn't that worth something?
Everything is a fight. Everything all the way along has been a fight.
And luckily my parents did that for me, but imagine if you couldn't do that, if you don't have parents.
Fight continues.
Thanks for watching.